Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey Kerr, contributing writer for GoldDerby.com. I'm here with Alex Meyer to discuss our predictions for this year's Primetime Emmy Awards. We've got a lot to cover, and we're starting with the drama categories, especially since, drama series is the one category that's usually presented at the very end of the night. And so we're, of course, going to start with Outstanding Drama Series. And of course, if you of course, Alex and I will take turns reading off the nominees in each category. So I'll be going first since I'm the host. And so the nominees for Outstanding Drama Series are The Americans, The Crown, Game of Thrones, The Handmaid's Tale, Stranger Things, This Is Us, and Westworld. So, okay, now what's interesting is that last year Game of Thrones took a year off from the Emmys while The Handmaid's Tale won its place. This year, both of those shows are competing face to face for the first time. Now, Game of Thrones may have won the most awards at the Creative Arts ceremony last weekend, but The Handmaid's Tale is more relevant now thanks to the Me Too and Time's Up movements. So, where do you stand?
I think The Handmaid's Tale is going to win again, just simply because it more than doubled its nomination haul this year. And of course, the Me Too and Time's Up movement make it now more relevant than ever before. And even though Emmy voting ended in late August, if it were still going on now, like if they allowed votes right up until the literal last minute, I think it would get even more votes just due to the fact that now Donald Trump's new a pick for the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh, who's not yet been confirmed, he's been recently accused of sexual assault from his high school days. So, yeah. So I think just with Donald Trump continuing to embarrass our country, and especially just the Me Too and Time's Up movement, and the fact that the show itself, for the most part, still has strong critical acclaim. Although I know the season finale, excuse me, not series.
Well, yeah, because there's a third season.
Was extremely controversial among both fans and critics, although technically that season finale is not eligible until next year's Emmys because it aired outside the deadline for this year's eligibility. So whether or not that will impact it next year will obviously remains to be seen. But I just think that with everything that's gone on this season, I think it'll help it win again. Although I wouldn't underestimate Game of Thrones possibly upstaging an upset. I don't think it will, but it certainly has the potential to, given that it won 2 years in a row in 2015 and 2016, and the fact that it won 7 trophies at the Creative Arts shows that Emmy voters still obviously love it, at least from a technical standpoint. And then for the rest of my predictions, I was going to put The Americans in third place because of its sweep at the Television Critics Association and the fact that it was in its final season. But because of its surprise casting win, I decided to put The Crown in third place instead.
Well, yeah.
As Amanda Spears pointed out, The Crown has more below the line nominations and The Americans has none. So, but I do have The Americans in fourth place. Then I have This Is Us in fifth. I put it a little higher than, say, Stranger Things or Westworld because This Is Us did win the Ensemble Award at the SAG Awards. So clearly the actors branch pays attention to it. And then finally, I have Stranger Things and Westworld in sixth and seventh place.
Oh. Well, yeah, I was about to bring up The Crown because it, of course, managed to pull a huge surprise last weekend when it won the award for Outstanding Casting for a Drama Series. Now, of course, last year we were all led to believe Stranger Things was going to win Drama Series because it won the the Drama Casting Award. Yet that, of course, did us all a disservice. And it was especially interesting with The Crown winning because this was its second season, and the next season they've recast every role as they're not going to put the cast of the first two seasons in heavy makeup. So I do agree. The Crown, I think, is definitely, I could see it sneaking in, and of course that casting win, it could I guess could be a sign of if it could win an individual acting race, which we'll of course be talking about soon. And yeah, fourth place, The Americans, again because of its final season. But then again, not only did it not receive any below the line tech nominations, it also doesn't have a directing nomination, and that's a disadvantage.
Hmm. Plus, it hasn't won anything beyond Margot Martindale's controversial guest acting wins.
Yeah, and of course, and Charles Brights was
Smash
literally furious the second year she won that he broke a monitor.
I probably, if I had been sitting near a monitor when Suicide Squad won its best makeup and hairstyling Oscar, I would have done the same thing. I
Yeah.
mean, when Kate McKinnon announced as the winner her co-presenter Jason Bateman, he looked pissed off because he wasn't clapping like this was his face. He was like, which means he's like, which means I think he probably did not vote for it.
No, I bet if I know. In fact, if I think if that category was run by preferential voting system, he probably was ranked in last place, which I mean isn't very far since there's only three nominees, and there of course should be five.
Yeah, but that's a whole another topic because we can't get too far off topic here.
Yeah, yeah, yes. And as for the last three, I have Stranger Things in fifth, mainly because I maintained writing directing nominations. Sixth place, Westworld, and seventh place, This Is Us. Now, while I do like the point you made about how the actors branch still respects it, like it won a guest acting award last weekend for Ron Cephas Jones, but no, it still doesn't. Well, it underperforms this year because, of course, last year a lot of us thought the reason why it didn't get any writing directing nominations because they submitted too many contenders. This year they submitted less, yet still failed. And not to mention, Christy Metz missed out, so Andy Moore and Justin Hartley. So, and again, while I do understand the point you made about how the actors branch still respects it, I'm still not really. Well, it's still pretty much a long shot for it to win this year.
Yeah, I don't see it winning at all, but I just think that I don't have statistics on the TV Academy of how many members are in each branch like I do for the Film Academy, but I assume, like the Film Academy, I assume the actors branch probably makes up the biggest block of voters. So
Mhm.
that I think maybe gives it a slight advantage, but I don't think we're, if anything beyond Handmaid's Tale, Game of Thrones, The Crown, or Americans wins, I think people will be shocked.
Mhm.
It'll be a if This Is Us were to win, I think it would be as shocking as say Merritt Weaver's win for Nurse Jackie in 2013, when pretty much everyone predicted her dead last.
Well, yeah, and of course we'll be talking about Merritt Weaver a little later in the day, but so I guess that's it for drama series. Now on to a lead actor in a drama series, and Alex, the nominees are.
All right, the nominees are Jason Bateman, Ozark; Sterling K. Brown, This Is Us; Ed Harris, Westworld; Matthew Rhys, The Americans; Milo Ventimiglia, This Is Us; and Jeffrey Wright, Westworld.
Okay, so now Sterling K. Brown may have managed to edge out his co-star Milo Ventimiglia last year, but they both seem to be at greater risk of vote splitting this year, especially given that Ventimiglia's character Jack Pearson was a much bigger deal this past season on This Is Us. So, and and I believe you have This Is Us cast member winning, and who is that?
Well, actually, I had first put Sterling K. Brown in first place, but then after reading Joy Sang's recent article, I decided to switch to Milo Ventimiglia. It's probably one of my riskiest predictions, but I do think, given the fact that we saw Milo Ventimiglia have a bigger presence this season with the focus on how the character of Jack died, and we get more focus on some of Jack's more flawed sides of himself. He's always being presented as the perfect TV dad, but we see him struggle with things that were shown in the first season, but are explored more, like his alcoholism for one thing. So it gives him greater range. And Ventimiglia almost in a way kind of auditioned what could be an Emmy acceptance speech when he was the main spokesperson for the cast of This Is Us at the SAG Awards when they won Ensemble for a Drama Series.
Yeah, and of course, the argument was almost made for David Harbour the year before when Stranger Things won, but of course, that didn't really lead him anywhere.
Yeah, well, but John Lithgow was pretty much a virtual lock in the category that year. So,
Yeah, yes, he was.
I just think, kind of how the first season of This Is Us was kind of, well, it certainly was everyone's story. The biggest focus was on Randall, which I think, helped Sterling K. Brown win. This season, it seemed like the biggest focus was on Jack. And given the episodes of Super Bowl Sunday in the car, which many argue was Ventimiglia's standout, and the car was, I believe, his actual submission for voters. So maybe that will help him. I mean, and then I do have Matthew Reese in second place,
Who
although
I actually am predicting.
I don't think I don't think any category people from the Americans are winning, actually, just because I think with all the anti-Russian sentiment in the wake of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin being all buddy buddy with each other and everything, and Trump trusting Putin more than his own government, basically, I think voters are going to feel turned off by the idea of throwing a win to a show where you're basically rooting for Russian spies who are spying against America, even though it's technically set in the 1980s rather than the present day. Still, many Emmy voters clearly can remember the days when the Soviet Union still existed and Russia was our number one enemy. But and so, I mean, maybe some people will look past the politics, but I don't really see that happening. I think there's just too much toxic politics going on right now that there's no way voters are going to completely separate themselves from it. I mean, we saw Oscar voters a few years ago openly admit that they would not nominate Clint Eastwood for Best Director for American Sniper because of his stunt at the 2012 Republican National Convention.
Right, where he was talking to an empty chair.
Yes, so I can definitely see a scenario similar to that happening here, and
Well,
in not just this category, but every other category the Americans is nominated for.
Well, well, well. I guess possible, but well, I'm going with Matthew Reese not only because of the factor of vote splitting, but also because this is the final season for the Americans, and it's 4 nominations here. He's probably their best shot at winning an award Monday night. And in fact, I should point out that I think I could see helping Milo is that at the Creative Arts last weekend, it could have been, it would have been, it probably it probably would have been easy for Joel McCraney to just repeat his winning guest actor in a drama series, but no, they went for Ron Cephas Jones. So it probably shows that Emmy voters are paying attention to this series, and especially under this new voting system, they are probably more open to not going with the same people over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so and then as for the rest of my predictions, I have Sterling K. Brown in third, Jeffrey Wright in fourth, Ed Harris in fifth, and Jason Bateman in sixth.
Okay, I have most of those same 4 rankings, except, well, I guess I can understand your last place choice because of the Jason Bateman factor, like how we talked about how he was probably on the bubble for a nomination for Ozark, but no, he managed to get not once but twice, for not only for acting but for directing.
Mm-hmm. But the fact that Ozark didn't really get, I mean, it got some other below the line nominations, but it didn't get any writing nominations. It didn't get any other acting nominations. Like his co-star Laura Linney was snubbed for lead actress. And I think if some voters are still angry about the whole controversial New York Times interview with the Arrested Development cast, where Bateman and his male castmates pretty much ghostlit their co star Jessica Walter when she described how Jeffrey Tambor had been verbally abusive to her and how it was one of the worst experiences of her career. And so if voters are angry at him for trying to make excuses for someone else's abusive behavior, I could see them automatically refusing to vote for him.
Well, well, yes. I mean, it honestly didn't hurt him getting the nominations he got. I mean, granted, I probably wouldn't be surprised if he was. Well, I wouldn't go far as say filler, but I guess I probably wouldn't be surprised if he was only like 5th or 6th place in receiving the nominations.
Mm-hmm. Plus, I think not only Ed Harris, I think he has a slightly better shot, not only because of Westworld having way more nominations and just for the fact that his character's identity was such a huge theme of the past season. Plus, there's just the snob appeal of him being a more prestigious and respected actor, I guess.
Well, yeah. Oh, I'm
Because Ed
sorry.
Harris was making hit films when Jason Bateman was still a kid.
Yeah. Yes, and I guess, well, though, of course, again, I should repeat that under this new voting system, we've seen these veteran actors lose a little more easily to these, I guess, more fresher faces, but again, we shall see. And I guess now on to outstanding lead actress in the drama series. Okay, the nominees are Claire Foy, The Crown, Tatiana Maslany, Orphan Black, Elizabeth Moss, The Handmaid's Tale, Sandra Oh, Killing Eve, Kerry Russell, The Americans, and Evan Rachel Wood, Westworld. Now, okay, so Elizabeth Moss continues to kill it on The Handmaid's Tale, and while I do think she has a great shot at repeating her victory from last year, so I am predicting her, Claire Foy does appear to be within striking distance. I mean, not only did she manage to upset Moss by winning her second consecutive SAG Award in this exact category earlier this year, but this is also her final season on The Crown, as Olivia Colman will be taking over as Queen Elizabeth II for the next 2 seasons. And it is also worth noting that Foy is already garnering Oscar buzz for her role as Neil Armstrong's first wife in the upcoming biographical film First Man. So I have a feeling you and I are on similar grounds here by with that Moss is out front, though Foy within striking distance.
Mm-hmm. Plus, Claire Foy is taking over the role of Lisbeth Salander from Rooney Mara in the upcoming Girl with the Dragon Tattoo sequel, Girl in the Spider's Web.
Yeah.
So, what are the rest of your rankings?
Oh, okay. Well, third place. Okay, I guess I kind of went back and forth on third place, but I've settled on Sandra Oh for Killing Eve, even though her series isn't nominated. I mean, then again, we saw 2 years ago Tatiana Maslany pulling an upset that literally came completely out of nowhere. I was like, whoa, where the hell did that come from? And plus, in fact, I know Sam Ekman's predicting her, Cordell Martin. In fact, I don't know if you saw his the Daniel Montgomery's chat with Cordell on on how he managed to win the predictions contest on the Creative Arts Awards, but he mentions that when he's making predictions, he often takes into account cultural significance. And Sandra Oh's the first Asian performer to have been nominated in this category, and I could see that pushing her. I guess that narrative probably pushing her to a win. And fourth, Kerry Russell. Fifth, Tatiana Maslany, since this is also her, of course, Kerry Russell, Tatiana Maslany, and Claire Foy, this is all their final chances to prevail for their, last time competing for their signature roles on their programs. And of course, again, Tatiana Maslany pulled an upset, so I'm not counting her out. And sixth, I had to put Evan Rachel Wood there, since, there's nowhere else to put her.
Mm-hmm. So I have Elizabeth Moss and Claire Foy in the top 2. I think it'll be a nail biter, but I mean, we'll see what happens. But I, I just think that Elizabeth Moss, like we have someone else win. We have another Handmaid's Tale cast member who I think will win in the supporting races.
Yeah.
And I don't see how that person who, when we talk about, I don't see how that person can win without Elizabeth Moss also winning too, since their characters' interaction with each other was such a key component.
Well, yeah, you could also say the same thing about, how can Handmaid's Tale win drama series if Moss doesn't win this category?
Right. So yeah, but I mean, Claire Foy's surprise SAG win, and that was one of my super bets that year because I assumed Elizabeth Moss would win in a landslide, and I think Claire Foy did too because she didn't even bother attending that year.
Well, yeah, she was probably busy filming First Man, which, of course, as I mentioned, she's already garnering Oscar buzz for.
could be. I mean, I don't know, but um, but yeah, I mean, I have them in the top two, and I have Carrie Russell in third, mainly because this is her last time she can compete for the Americans. And she did win the TCA award, but then again, of course, the TCA and the Emmys rarely ever line up perfectly.
Well, yeah, and I don't believe they overlap, do they?
I don't think so. I honestly don't know.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
especially since,
those are mostly critics, and
well, yeah, the
critic,
acting categories at the Emmys are voted on by actors.
right? And I don't know how many critics are actually members of the TV Academy too. I mean,
Like same thing we question with the Film Academy.
yeah. Well, and then I have Sandra Oh in fourth place. I'm not ruling out a possible win for her, but I do feel that just given the fact that Killing Eve only got a nomination for her in writing and nothing else, and given the fact that it's on a smaller network like BBC America, that kind of indicates to me that obviously some Emmy voters have seen the show, but maybe not enough. And I feel that once the Americans is out of the way for next year, we'll see Killing Eve get a lot more nominations next time around. And of course, if the that of course depends on if season two is as good as season one, because we saw with Mr. Robot how the second season was not as well received as the first, and it just dropped off the Emmy voters' radar like that.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, so, I mean, I could see some voters maybe wanting to give Sandra Oh a win just because of the fact that she never won for Grey's Anatomy in the past, but I
Yeah.
just I don't really see how Elizabeth Moss and Claire Foy is just going to be too much of a strong hurdle to overcome, I think, for her. But I actually have Evan Rachel Wood in fifth because I think
Oh,
this again with Westworld has way more nominations than Orphan Black, and I just feel that I have Tatiana Maslany in last place because I just feel her Emmy win just came after years and years of people screaming, "Give this woman an Emmy because she plays 7 different roles." Critics were screaming that, and they would always be like, "Screw you for not nominating her because she plays all these clones." For years and years, they kept screaming, and I wonder if Emmy voters we're finally like, "All right, fine, we'll give her an Emmy. Now will you shut up about it?"
yeah, well, yeah, and it probably didn't hurt that she was playing multiple roles.
Right. I just think in their case, Emmy voters may feel, well, we've already given it to her once for playing all these clones. I don't really think we need to give it to her again. I mean, just given the fact that her show has only ever gotten nominated for her and nothing else, kind of shows that it has more of a cult like fan base among Academy voters rather than like widespread appeal.
Hmm.
So
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I don't really see any scenario in which she can possibly win this time around. I think just the last time there was just the strong overdue sentiment for her, and I just feel that Emmy voters will feel been there, done that with her, and they don't really need to give it to her again.
Hmm. Well, in any case, let's move on to the next category, which is really probably a tough call, but in any case, the nominees for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series are.
All right, the nominees are Nikolai Coster-Waldau, Game of Thrones; Peter Dinklage, Game of Thrones; Joseph Fiennes, The Handmaid's Tale; David Harbour, Stranger Things; Mandy Patinkin, Homeland; and Matt Smith, The Crown.
Okay, now you could really make a case for any one, well, at least of the top three I have listed. I currently have Peter Dinklage winning, I guess, sort of by default. I mean, he's won this category twice before, though, of course, last time he was nominated when Game of Thrones was in contention, well, I guess vote splitting was a problem since Kit Harington was pretty much the talking point of that season, and the Emmy went to Van Mendelsohn for Bloodline of all things. Yeah, so. I must admit, I don't watch Game of Thrones, though from what I've heard, that Nikolai doesn't appear to be as much of a problem for Peter Dinklage in this category as Kit Harington was a couple of years ago. Though, then again, with all the momentum behind The Handmaid's Tale, I mean, I could see Joseph Fiennes prevailing here. It is worth noting that so far, Handmaid's Tale hasn't lost an acting race at the Emmys yet. The only time it has was when it was up against itself. And then again, Matt Smith managed to make the cut for his final season on The Crown, as Tobias Menzies will be taking over as Prince Philip for the next 2 seasons. So, and I have a feeling your prediction isn't one of the 3 I just listed.
Well, I mean, what are your full rankings?
Well, 4th place, I have David Harbour for Stranger Things. I mean, yes, I'm aware that he's actually high in the odds. He's expected to win, but I'm not sure if he's that strong of a front runner. I mean, no discredit to his work on the show. It's that I don't know. He didn't really. I'm not sure if he really appeared to be like the one person who could have won last year had John Lithgow not been up for the crown. Like, it probably could have gone to Ron Cephas Jones, which they did make up to him this year in guest acting. But as for the last 2, 5th place Nikolai and 6th Mandy Patinkin.
So I do have David Harbour winning. I think, just based on the episode analysis I read for his submission, it seems like had this still been in the old blue ribbon panel system where they gather just a small group of voters in a hotel room to watch the tapes, the submission alone looks like it could be enough for him to win if it were in the old system. But I think, I do think now that John Lithgow is out of the way and David Harbour had one of the strongest chances to upset last year, I do think this clears the way for him. And I know that the episode he's submitted and centers around his friend, I guess him being more or less a foster father to Millie Bobby Brown's 11, which of course kind of plays into how his character arc, because in the first season we saw flashbacks of how his biological daughter died from cancer, I think, and how that obviously devastated him and led to him having like a drinking problem and all that. So I could see and obviously taking care of 11 is him trying to regain a sense of purpose in his life. Plus, I know that his episode he submitted seems to be one of his strongest episodes of the season. So I feel like if they want to honor Stranger Things in some way, this is probably where they will honor it, especially since it hasn't won any acting awards at all so far.
Oh, yeah, in fact, it was shut out on the primetime ceremony last year.
Yeah, so maybe they might want to avoid that this year. But then I have Matt Smith in 2nd place because he did submit what many consider to be one of his best episodes of showcasing his portrayal of Prince Philip. And obviously, since he's not playing the role anymore, this could be the only chance to reward him. Although, if some Emmy voters, particularly female voters, were angry about how he was making way more money than Claire Foy, despite the fact that she was the main star, I could see how that could make some people not vote for him. And then I have Peter Dinklage in 3rd, just because, I mean, from what I read of his episode submission, it sounds like it's a stellar submission because he's like front and center of that episode. But since he already has 2 Emmys for Game of Thrones, Emmy voters may feel, well, he already has 2. I don't really think we need to give him another one. Maybe they'll give him one for the final season, as like a big goodbye, kind of like when Breaking Bad won all those Emmys for its final season.
Yeah, especially how Bryan Cranston managed to beat Matthew McConaughey for True Detective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's so I think Peter Dinklage, they may feel he's already been rewarded enough.
Although when he won the 2nd time, it was an upset over Jonathan Banks for Better Call Saul.
True. But obviously that was still when Game of Thrones was at just like the absolute peak of its popularity, pretty much. I mean, obviously it still is very popular, but like at that point in time, that was when Game of Thrones was like, it was like so popular that even its most controversial episode still managed to get a directing nomination. Which I'll talk about more when we get to the directing categories.
Okay.
And then I have Joseph Fiennes in 4th. And then I have Nikolai Coster-Waldau and Mandy Patinkin in 5th and 6th.
Okay, yeah, and this is probably the one category I could just see myself just, keep updating up until the very last minute, but we shall see. So, now on... I'm sorry?
This is the most open-ended race, I think, in the drama categories.
Yeah, and I believe Kevin Jacobson is predicting Matt Smith to prevail here.
Yeah, I did see his thing. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, so I guess now on to Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Drama Series. The nominees are Alexis Bledel, The Handmaid's Tale; Millie Bobby Brown, Stranger Things; Ann Dowd, The Handmaid's Tale; Lena Headey, Game of Thrones; Vanessa Kirby, The Crown; Tandy Newton, Westworld; and Yvonne Strahovski, The Handmaid's Tale. So now, while two of this year's nominees for The Handmaid's Tale, Ann Dowd and Alexis Bledel, both previously won in two separate categories last year, I'm betting on the show's third nominee, Yvonne Strahovski, to take the gold. I mean, her character, Serena Joy, there was a much bigger deal this past season. I think those factors will help her stand out.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like how season 1 was kind of a nice showcase for Ann Dowd, because we saw throughout how she, as Aunt Lydia, wielded her reign of terror over the handmaids. We saw in season 2 both in which Serena Joy basically has to deal with the fact that she herself has pretty much made herself a victim of her own agenda in Gilead. If like her conservative ideas of women being should be the submissive ones, all men be in charge of everything, and now she's having to live with the consequences of what she preached, basically. and and plus her performance has generated a lot of debate of whether or not Serena Joy should be considered a victim of abuse at all, because some people feel, well, yes, since she's a woman, she's subjected to the same things in many ways, but others have feel she's a woman in a position of privilege and she has things that people like the handmaids don't have. So the fact that her performance has generated all this debate probably says a lot about the strength of it, and probably people like to reward these complex performances that generate a lot of discussion about the nature of the performance as well as the show it's on. So I think that could definitely help her win here.
Well, yeah, not to mention she is planning to attend the Emmys Monday night despite being very late into her pregnancy. So she is planning to attend. Well, and of course, unless, of course, she ends up going to labor early. But then again,
How
I could just see
how
her.
far along is she? I mean, I haven't
I
been
heard, I
pregnant.
heard she's due late this month.
Oh wow, okay, so that kind of reminds me of
Catherine Zeta-Jones, when
Catherine.
she won the Oscar for Chicago while very pregnant.
Yeah, she gave birth a few weeks later, and of course, uh, infamously, we know in 1955, Judy Garland was pregnant with her third child,
Yeah.
and planning to attend the Oscars, but then she went into labor like the day or two before the ceremony, and the press showed up at her room thinking that she was such a lock to win that they were going to show her live in her hospital bed when her name was called. But then, of course, Grace Kelly's name was announced, the press literally left without even saying goodbye.
Yeah, I mean,
Like they had
yeah,
her wired up and everything in case her name was called. Because
well, yeah, and well, I doubt Lady Gaga will end up following those circumstances as girl, and we shall see if she ends up having better luck taking home the gold for the upcoming version of A Star Is Born.
yeah. Well, Lady Gaga's not pregnant though.
Well, I no, I meant well, that's what I was
Well,
talking
no,
about.
yeah, but
She's
I'm
Yeah,
well.
she's not pregnant,
I was
so I.
actually I was actually thinking this weird thing about Lady Gaga, and it kind of reminded me of this thing that Tariq Khan, I think, who said last year he thought I remember he said one thing that could prevent three billboards from winning Best Picture at the Oscars was he thought Abby Cornish's American accent wasn't good enough. Which made me think this. A lot of Hollywood celebrities are animal rights activists, and unfortunately, in the past, Lady Gaga has she's developed a reputation for buying and wearing fur, like real fur, like the Kardashians often do, which has often led her to get slammed by organizations like PETA. And I think I googled Lady Gaga fur to see if she still wears it, and I think on occasion she does. So if some some Oscar voters are strong animal rights activists, I can see them automatically refusing to nominate or vote for Lady Gaga for that reason alone.
Well, yeah, of course, not to get too off topic, but yeah, I was talking about the fact that we'll see if Lady Gaga has better luck at least taking home the gold than Judy Garland did.
Yeah. Rumor, according to legend, from what I read, Grace Kelly beat Judy Garland by only a few votes.
Wow.
At least that's what I've heard, but of course we never know because voting results for every Academy Awards has never
Well,
been made public.
well, yeah, I probably wouldn't be surprised if Academy members back then were feeling, well, Garland's going to win, but I'm going to vote for Grace Kelly just to put in a good word
Well,
for her.
don't forget Judy Garland had long had a reputation of being difficult to work with, so I think
Yeah.
that probably cost her the Oscar more than anything else.
Well, yeah, you can kind of say the same thing about Mickey Rourke when he lost for The Wrestler.
Yeah. Well, but anyway, back to this.
Yes.
So as for I guess my rankings, I do have Yvonne Strahovski winning, although maybe we know that Emmy voters, even under the new system, still kind of love repeat wins to a certain extent. So I have Ann Dowd in second place as a result. She could possibly win again,
Oh,
even
well, I actually
though
have Vanessa Kirby in second because, well, I mean, I guess whenever there's multiple nominees from the same, I guess, production in a category, I usually like to have them spread out in case of vote splitting, as well as the fact that, Vanessa Kirby, this, again, her final season on The Crown, as Helena Bonham Carter will be taking over as Princess Margaret for the next two seasons. Plus, Kirby was just in Mission Impossible Fallout, and we've seen Emmy winners helped by the fact that they were in a hit movie during the season.
you could say the same thing about Ann Dowd because she had a supporting role in the horror movie Hereditary,
Oh yeah.
which while it didn't please general audiences who gave it like a D plus on cinema score, critics and I guess you could say cinephiles, film lovers like you, me, Andrew Carden, and our other Gold Derby friends, we all absolutely loved it. So,
Well, yeah.
but
Well, yeah, and of course, Kate McKinnon 2 years ago when she surprised for Saturday Night Live, she was in the controversial remake of Ghostbusters.
I think she won more for her Hillary Clinton impression than anything else.
Well, that's true.
But then I actually have Tandy Newton in third place for
Oh,
Westworld because I think if some voter she was many people thought she would win last year, and if people were upset by her loss, I can see them voting for her this year. And I do believe from what I've read of her episode submission, it seems like that was her best episode of that season where she had to learn how to speak Japanese. So that could impress some voters.
very true.
And I have Vanessa Kirby in fourth. And then I was struggling with where to put my last three predictions, but I finally settled on Alexis Bledel in fifth. I think her winning last year, even though it was in guest and not supporting, could possibly help her win again, even though I don't think she has a chance against Strahovski and Dowd. But then I have Millie Bobby Brown in sixth because she did submit the episode was mostly centered on her character for the season.
Well, though I will say that, well, not a lot of people, myself included, were really the biggest fans of the episode. I thought that was the weakest episode of season two, but that's a whole nother conversation.
And then I have Lena Headey in last place just because every time we keep thinking she's going to win because whenever she would submit a standout episode, she always lost. I mean, not even when she submitted the Mother's Mercy episode for Game of Thrones when she was considered a lock to win, she still lost to Maggie Smith for the final season of Downton Abbey. So if she hasn't been able to win when she was considered the near lock, then I don't see how she can win this time around.
Well, we shall see if she has better luck for the final season, since that would be their last chance to award her for this role. No, I guess as for me, okay, here's what I've settled. Okay, I have Strahovski winning with Kirby as runner-up. And the rest, Ann Dowd, I just moved her up to third place, given what you said. Fourth place, Tandy Newton, who, of course, was also in, well, not exactly a hit since it wasn't really as successful as it probably could have been. But yeah, she was just in Solo, a Star Wars story. Fifth, I have Lena Headey, I guess mainly because of the big wins, the creative arts wins for Game of Thrones. And, if she wins here, it'd probably be a sign that Game of Thrones is going to win drama series. Sixth place, Alexis Bledel, and seventh, Millie Bobby Brown.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's move on to the next category.
Yes, which is outstanding directing for a drama series. And Alex, the nominees are.
All right, So the nominees are The Crown for the episode Pater Familias, Game of Thrones for the episode Beyond the Wall, Game of Thrones for the episode The Dragon and the Wolf, The Handmaid's Tale for the episode After, Ozark for the episode The Toll, Ozark for the episode Tonight We Improvise, and Stranger Things for the episode Chapter 9 The Gate.
Now, okay, so there are two Game of Thrones episodes nominated, two Ozark episodes nominated, although I'll say right away, I have both Ozark episodes down at the bottom in my rankings, mainly because, well, the show didn't really make a huge impact on Emmy voters. It's not for a drama series. Well, the rest of the nominees are. But as okay, so as for what I have currently winning, it's the Game of Thrones episode Beyond the Wall. Is that where you stand?
Yes, I figured Game of Thrones, it's probably going to win at least one major televised award, and I think directing is its best shot because when it did win drama series both times, it also won directing and writing both times. And while I don't really see it overcoming shows like Handmaid's Tale or Americans in terms of writing, I just think based on the pure technical achievement, it's almost like movie level directing rather than TV level directing, which I think has
Well,
greatly helped it win in the past. And also, all the episodes it won for were always big battle centric episodes.
Well, yes. In fact, I should point out that the director behind Beyond the Wall is Alan Taylor, who really had a kind of a rocky, well, relationship with taking on big films like Thor: The Dark World and Terminator Genesis. And yeah, he pretty much
Mhm.
kind of those experiences kind of led him to sticking with TV directing.
Yeah. Well, he only directed Thor: The Dark World after the original director Patty Jenkins dropped out due to
Mhm.
creative differences with Marvel,
Yeah.
which I
Yes.
know upset Natalie Portman a great deal. I remember reading about that at the time.
Well, yes, and not to mention, I've read a lot about how Terminator Genesis was kind of ruined from studio interference and all that.
Hmm. Yeah, but I just think with its, I just think that it's if they already gave it to Game of Thrones twice for directing these big battle centric episodes, I can't see how it won't win again this time around.
Well,
So,
yeah, plus it does seem to be the bigger directorial achievement.
mhm. But then I have The Handmaid's Tale in second place. I think it has a strong chance to win here.
Well,
Just
yes, and then, oh, I'm sorry, continue.
I think it has a strong chance to upset just because of the overall Emmy love for the show.
Well, yes. In fact, last year you and I both had opposite predictions. Though we at least agreed there'd be a split between directing and writing. Like you and I had opposite predictions on that. Like I thought Stranger Things would take directing and Handmaid's Tale would take writing. You predicted the opposite, and I remember writing was presented first, and when Handmaid's Tale won, I was like, "Ha! I was right." And then when it won directing, I was like, "Oh, you just knew Handmaid's Tale was going to win drama series." So if we once again see the same show win both these categories, that's your drama series winner.
Yeah, well, I've noticed the trend, at least for this decade. The key award I think that indicates drama series is not directing but writing, because we've seen a lot of shows win like writing and drama series, but not directing. Like Boardwalk Empire won drama directing in 2011 and 2012, but not writing, because the two shows that won writing those 2 years, Mad Men and Homeland, also won drama series those years as well.
Well, not to mention that David Fincher won directing for the pilot episode of House of Cards, and that didn't win drama series.
No, and there was a split that year all around because Homeland won writing for a drama series again, but that was more, I think, just of a celebration of for a man who had died, because the winner was posthumous, and then of course Breaking Bad won drama series. But then after that, it's been pretty steady with the writing and the drama series winners going hand in hand from 2014 onward.
Well, yes. Well, this is what I'm talking about. If we once again see the same show win both writing and directing, that's your drama series winner. If I'm not saying that whoever wins directing will win drama series, I'm saying you get what I'm saying, right?
Right, but I'm just saying I think the writing
Well,
award, I think it will be the stronger indicator than the directing.
well, yes. Especially since television is the writer's medium.
Hmm. And then I have the Game of Thrones episode Dragon and the Wolf in third, because again, it's still Game of Thrones, and it's obvious that the Emmys like Jeremy Podeswa because he's been nominated here before for Game of Thrones, albeit the last time he was nominated, it was for the episode that, surprisingly, for the episode that even many Game of Thrones fans think is the show's worst episode, and that was Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken, in which the character of Sansa Stark is raped by her husband on their wedding night or something. And I remember that episode garnered a lot of hate from critics, fans, even one website I remember, I think it was the marysue.com. They were so offended by that episode, they said, "We're never covering Game of Thrones again."
Wow.
Because they're a very feminist website, so they obviously found the treatment of women in that episode, that was like the breaking point for them.
Hmm.
But obviously that episode did not win that year, and I'm sure if it had won, there would have been massive outrage.
Yeah.
I know Jeremy Podeswa was also nominated for directing an episode of the miniseries The Pacific. I remember he was nominated for that. He didn't win there either, but so he has a history of being nominated but never winning.
Always the bridesmaid and never the bride.
Maybe he's been a producer on Game of Thrones too. I'd have to check, but
Hmm.
I don't think he's ever won for directing. So um, and then as for the rest of my rankings, I have The Crown in fourth, Stranger Things in fifth, and then Ozark in the last two places. But I have Jason Bateman's episode in sixth, since he's been nominated two times. I think that gives him greater visibility, and then I have the other Ozark episode in last place.
Well, yeah, especially considering that Bateman stars in the show.
Yeah.
And as for my rankings, I actually have The Crown in third. I mean, I guess given its surprise win for casting, well, of course, we don't know if that'll be a strong indicator, but yeah, I could just see, maybe it pulling if it's a sign or not. I am mindful of that. And not to mention, it's by, of course, Stephen Daldry, who, of course, is, prestigious director of both stage and screen. He's a 3-time Oscar nominee, a 2-time Tony winner, so I could see that prestige factor helping him. And I have Dragon the Wolf from Game of Thrones in fourth, Stranger Things fifth, and yeah, I agree with you on the bottom two on, the exact ranking of Ozark.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now on to drama writing.
Okay, so the nominees for Outstanding Writing for a Drama Series are The Americans for the episode Start, The Crown for the episode Mystery Man, Game of Thrones for the episode The Dragon and the Wolf, The Handmaid's Tale for the episode June, Killing Eve for the episode Night's Face, and Stranger Things for the episode Chapter 9, The Gate. So I have The Handmaid's Tale winning this.
Same here. I mean, even though a lot of people feel The Americans will win kind of as a way to honor its series finale, similar to how Friday Night Lights won this category for its series finale, even though it didn't win drama series. I don't see that happening simply because of, as I said before, I think some Emmy voters may take their real life anger against Russia and Vladimir Putin's regime and have that affect them and have that make them not vote for it here. And I also just think if The Handmaid's Tale is going to win drama series again, then I don't see how it doesn't win this category too.
Uh-huh.
So I think it'll be a close race because I can imagine Emmy voters that are fans of The Americans wanting to vote for everything it's nominated for, provided, of course, what branch they belong to, because I know you can only vote for program and then whatever your branch is. You can't vote for everything like if you were an Oscar voter.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'll be a tight race, but I have Handmaid's Tale and Americans in first and second. And then I have The Crown in third because I think it's a very writing heavy show because it's created by Peter Morgan, who did movies like The Queen, which won Helen Mirren her Oscar, and also Frost Nixon. And he's also a playwright, so he's obviously taking his playwriting experience into making the show.
Well, yes, and it is also worth noting that, Peter Morgan managed to win Helen Mirren the Oscar and the Tony for performances as Queen Elizabeth in The Queen on film and The Audience on Stage.
Mm-hmm. And then I have Killing Eve in fourth place, Game of Thrones in fifth, and then Stranger Things in sixth.
Now, why do you have Game of Thrones ranked so low?
Well, I mean, I just think that, you know, with Killing Eve, it's a spy series and movies. One thing that often determines whether they're good or bad is not just the action scenes, of course, but also I think the writing is a big factor.
Hmm.
So, I think if like people if I think if people were upset a few years ago with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's the writer here, of her not getting any recognition in either acting or writing for her comedy series Fleabag, I could see them wanting to make it up to her here.
I see. And although, well,
In Game of Thrones, I think, I just think that with Handmaid's Tale having to compete against it, and Handmaid's Tale being more focused on its writing than say, everything else in Game of Thrones. I think putting like its emphasis more on like the directing and the visual effects and costumes and everything. I think that kind of lowers its chances here.
although we have seen Game of Thrones win writing in the past.
Yeah, but I mean like that was kind of when it was considered the front runner to win drama series though. Because it's not the front runner this time, I'm not tempted to predict it in a high place.
Hmm. Well, with Killing Eve, I have it in last place mainly because it's the only one that's not up for drama series.
Mm. Yeah, but I mean, we've seen things uh, like it may be in the lim. This may be an example in a different category, but we've seen like upsets where like the Hour won Best Movie Limited Series Writing, and it wasn't nominated for any acting awards or directing or even limited series the year it won. So we've seen huge upsets happen before. I don't see it happening this time, but because of precedents of where we've seen, I guess, British centric series that don't get many nominations but still prevail despite having all the odds stacked against it. I kind of took that into consideration when putting it here. And I just think with the buzz around Killing Eve and the fact that it's fresher in the public's mind because it came out so late near the end of the eligibility period, I think that gives it a stronger chance to win since both Game of Thrones and Stranger Things premiered their latest seasons almost a year ago. And in Game of Thrones' case, over a year ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the timing matters of when, especially for writing of when your episode comes out.
Hmm. Yes. Well, as for my rankings, beyond Handmaid's Tale, which I have at front, here's what I settled on: The Crown in second place. Well, again, as we talked about how writing is probably the more tipping point of what's going to win the series race. Again, well, as I said, well, whoever wins writing here, unless it's Killing Eve, then that's probably your series winner. Will probably be especially more evident if it wins both writing and directing. But yeah, Crown second, The Americans third, Game of Thrones fourth, Stranger Things fifth, and Killing Eve sixth.
All right.
All right, so we've just covered all the drama series categories, so we'll be back soon to cover the comedy series categories.